how many jobs have we lost? How many million jobs have we lost here in America because of globalization? Before the economic turndown, 3 or 4 million anyway, and it's all a lie.
We lost 5 million over the previous 8 years, and just this year alone, so far, we've lost about 700,000 jobs a month over a 4-month period, and that's 2.8 million. And so we're over 10 million. A depression would be 14 million, and that's based on the short-term unemployment rate of 10%, and also reflecting to the banks at 10% unemployment, they figure that banks will need about $74.6 billion to survive and make their balance sheets well. But I'm looking for 11% short-term and 22% U6, so that means they'll need $600 billion.
Now you're talking about, of course, unemployment figures, and I think we're in for some very, very real problems as more and more people lose their jobs and more major companies begin shutting down all across America. I think we've got a long way to go, unfortunately, before we get to the bottom of this a recession or depression, as Bob calls it, and I think it probably is. I think, of course, we're going to find that things are going to get extremely violent before this is over. We'll be right back. Well, this is Dr. Stan. Our guest is Bob Chapman. Our telephone number is 1-888-24-LIBERTY, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, or 464-8295 if you have a question for Bob. But certainly as we look and see what's going on, we find that we have the so-called stress test. Oh, we had the stress test, and we found out that all of the banks passed the stress test. Of course, a few of them we found are going to need a little additional money, like, of course, Bank of America. I think they're going to need some $37 billion, and Wells Fargo is going to need a great deal of money. And you go down the list of all the people, GMAC, they're talking they're going to have to raise something like $60 or $70 billion just so that they can have the amount of money that they need to cover all of their losses. And, of course, what happens if they lose more? Well, go right ahead and pick up the story there, Bob.
Well, Meredith Whitney, who 2 years ago this coming June exposed this whole thing with Citigroup, and that's where it started, and this is where the whole thing came unglued. She said today on CNBC that a lot of the assets the banks are holding are rotting day by day. And she said, this is not the last bailout. There will be more. And what she's telling you, as one of the great experts in America today on bank stocks, is they're all broke. It's simple. They're broke.
Well, she has some excellent information. Incidentally, if anybody wants to go to her website, I think it's called fiercefinance.com, but you can pull that down off your search engine. But Meredith Whitney, an excellent source of information, puts out a report every day with 4 or 5, or actually 5 major issues and a lot of sub-issues, but she certainly keeps you abreast of what's really going on with the banks. Well, let's go to Ray, who's calling us from Santa Cruz. Again, our telephone number, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, or here in the Central Coast of California at 464-8295. Hey, Ray, do you have a question for our guest?
Well, I have a comment, actually, that I'd like to add to the discussion. The fact is that Obama, among other people, he's hired Ellison to be his tech advisor. And Ellison is going to lay off 20,000 people at Sun Microsystems that they bought it. He's one of the most evil men in business, and yet Obama picks him as his tech advisor. And that is the last straw for me. I can't stand that man anymore. I wish there was some way we could get him out of office.
Well, how now? Do you have any contact with Microsystems?
I was involved in the electronics business for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah, I worked at Hewlett-Packard, and I know all about Ellison, and he's one of the most evil people that in the world.
All right, fine. Let's get Bob Chapman's view. Would you have any thoughts at all about that, Bob?
It's true. Absolutely true. And if I don't forget, it was 1998. There was a big stock scandal involving him and his company and his selling and all of that sort of thing. And he only made, I don't know, maybe $700-800 million. I mean, these people, when they get into corruption and evil, there's never enough money for them. There's never enough power, or what they look at as power to solve their egos, because usually they're either evil or they're underperformers.
Yeah. Ellison, he does a lot of. They make software, okay, for accounting, okay? It's the worst software in the world for accounting. I know because my sister is a CPA, and she's complained about this for years, that Oracle makes the lousiest software for accounting. The man has just done some horrible things, and I've been watching him over the years, and, I've been watching Oracle. Now they've got a stadium named after him in Oakland. It's just, I can't stomach it anymore. I don't even want to read the newspaper anymore, because I know for one thing, they're putting all the newspapers on the internet. And it's just, the whole situation is really frightening to me. And I think Obama is thumbing his nose at the American people by picking somebody like Ellison to be his advisor.
Well, I think you have to understand, Ray, there really are people who hate America. They believe America is responsible for all the problems of the world. And a lot of these people are in government today, and they're doing everything they can to destroy our nation. They know that if they destroy the value of our currency, they'll destroy the stability of this nation. And why do you think that they're creating all this money? They know it's inflationary. They know where it's going to end up. They just don't want the American people to know until it's far too late. Hey, thanks very much for calling, Ray. God bless you. We'll be back in just a moment. We'll welcome your calls at 1-888-24-LIBERTY or 464-8295. Well, this is Dr. Stan back here. Our guest is Bob Chapman, and certainly, Bob, there are lots of things going on, certainly, and most people really can't connect the dots. What do you think about General Motors' chance of survival, or do you think they're going to go into bankruptcy as well?
Bankruptcy, and they'll be chopped up. And what's going to be really interesting is in the bankruptcy for GM, which must occur within the first 3 weeks of June, how are they going to neutralize the naked derivatives that were sold on the bonds of General Motors? A derivative, or collateralized debt obligation is what it's called, is a piece of insurance. You own $1 million worth of bonds in General Motors, and you want to get that high yield, but you also want to be protected in losing your principal. So you get a derivative, a CDS, to cover that. And many of the writers of CDS, collateralized debt obligations, went naked on them. They had no collateralization. They threw the money to the bottom line to show profits in order to make the stock go up, so that the officers in the company could sell their options, which were at $10 or $20 or $30 for $80 or $100 a share. And so I think there were, on GM bonds, 2.5, 3 times as many derivatives sold on those bonds as bonds existed. And so I don't know how they're going to settle that. And that is going to be a major problem for government. That's what happened with AIG. They funneled money into AIG, didn't tell you where the money was going to be applied, and after investigation we found that AIG had funneled the money that came from the Fed to the people that they owed money to because they were the writers of naked CDS, or collateralized debt obligations, or insurance.
Hold that thought. We'll be back in just a moment with